Hi, I'm Beth Graves, and thank you for joining us on the Circus Arts Spotlight. Each week, we'll shine the spotlight on the people, programs, and events of the Circus Arts Conservatory. In addition to professional and student youth performances, we'll explore incredible outreach programs and learn how the circus arts impact so many aspects of life. For more information on today's topic, or anything circus arts related, please go to our website, circusarts.org. Now, let's get started.
Hi, today we shine the light on CAC co-founder and vice president Dolly Jacobs. Dolly was born into circus royalty. Her father was Lou Jacobs, the legendary clown for Ringling Brothers and Barnum Bailey Circus, and her mother was a model from New York and so much more, who quickly transformed her career to become a circus artist as well. She is the first circus artist, this is Dolly, not her mom, who ever received the National Endowment for the Arts National Heritage Fellowship, and she's known worldwide as Queen of the Air. And it is my pleasure to have Dolly Jacobs on the show today. Hi, Dolly.
Hi. Thanks for having me.
Sure. Thank you for being here. So we're here today to discuss legacy, really diving deep into some of your background and your family's background. So as I mentioned, your father was Lou Jacobs, and yes. I was wondering if you could tell us the story of how your father became one of the world's most famous circus clowns.
Well, you know, it goes so far back, and I'll try to put it in a nutshell. My dad was born in Germany, in Bremerhaven, actually born in Geestemünde, but very close to Bremerhaven, where he grew up. And he came over in 1923, so he was 20 years old at the time. He was born in 1903. And he came over and into Ellis Island, and his older brother, was already here. So he had a place to stay. But he worked in vaudeville for a couple of years next to Jimmy Durante and Red Skelton. They were like, you know, all in that same age range and just starting out kind of at the time. And he worked there for a couple of years, and he was like an assistant in acrobatic act. But my father always said he was born with a funny bone, and he must have, because he had this sense of humor that was he was born with. It was natural. So when he was assisting in this acrobatic act, he told me the story that he stole the show because the people were looking at him rather than the guy doing the flips. But they did that. He did that for a couple of years, and then joined Ringling Brothers in 1925.
Wow! And
then was there for over 60 years. So he was not only was he comedian, but he was a contortionist, meaning he was very limber. So he did hand balancing and such. So he was going to do a hand balancing act, contortion hand balancing. And he had a partner he was working with at the time. And the partner left. So, and they were doing, I guess, together the hand balancing. But he had to have, those years back on Ringling, in those years back in the 20s, apparently if you wanted, you had to have a ground act and an aerial act. Well, he didn't have the aerial act because his partner left, so he took his contortion work into clowning, and thus I'm sure you're all familiar with the little motorized car.
Yeah.
That he would double himself over to get inside, and that was all because he was limber enough to get in there because he was over 6 feet tall. And plus the big clown shoes and the big outfit he had on and all that. So that started his clowning, and he was just a natural comic. And I tell you, whatever he did or whatever picture you see of him, he was always on. As soon as he walked through the curtain, he was always on, and he was a producing clown. He created that little car with a lawnmower motor the first time, and then it graduated. But he had the motorized bathtub. He had a motorized hospital bed. He had a motorized ski boat. baby buggy. I'm probably leaving something out, but he was very inventive.
And so did he create all those props himself?
He did.
So I've seen that little car at the Ringling Museum, and I always wondered how he got in and out of it. I had no idea he did contortion.
Well, I remember when he was, because I guess he was doing it before I was born, but he was tweaking it as he got on in life, and he was up in his late 70s, early 80s. He was still doing it, and it was hurting his back because there was no shocks in the little tires. They didn't have shocks, for the going over the bumps on the hippodrome track. And so he had the workshop there at Clown College in Venice at the arena, had them make it a quarter of an inch so that his back had a little bit of space there.
Oh my gosh.
Amazing.
That's a wonderful story.
Yeah, 1960, was it 65, I believe, or 68, he had his face on a U.S. postage stamp. He was the only living person to have his face on a U.S. postage stamp at the time. It was 5 cents. So you can look that up.
Okay.
Yeah.
So your mother, who I'm sorry just recently passed away, she had the most amazing life. She was a famous model before joining the circus, and I may be incorrect in this. Did she pilot a plane?
She did. It's one of those. Before she met my father, her boyfriend was a famous photographer in New York. My mother was a New Yorker, and they would go fly this little, I don't know what they're called, small planes, and he would leave her at the controls while he was shooting pictures outside the window. And she said that they were going around the Empire State Building, almost touching it with the wing.
My gosh.
She flew with him down to Cuba to have lunch with Ernest Hemingway. And, she's had quite the life. But she joined Ringling in 1947, 48, and as a showgirl on a whim. And at that time, all the showgirls, they had this one production number where they had all the girls go up in the air. Now, they weren't, established aerialists, but they did teach them the ABCs. Well, they rehearsed here in Sarasota for about 3 months or so and went directly to the old Madison Square Garden, and this would probably be 1948. And during that run there, which they're there for another 3 years, 4 months, probably 2 or 3 months there at the old garden, she did a revolving ladder. That was her aerial in the display with this other girl. And during, I guess, a month or so into the run, the other girl that was the counterbalance got off the ladder without thinking, and Mom took a 50-foot fall and crushed 5 vertebrae, and
oh my gosh,
they carried her across the street to the polyclinic, and she wore a body cast, and she was so fresh out of modeling and such in demand that they followed her all the way through her recuperation. She continued modeling with the body cast on, but story goes my father went to visit her, and that's where the romance started.
Ah, that's so nice.
So, yeah, and then that's the story, is how I came to be.
Yeah. So can you tell us a little bit about your childhood and how you became a performer?
Well, growing up in Sarasota, it's the hub. It's a treasure cove of circus artists that homesteaded here, because Ringling had their winter quarters here. So you have artists from all over the world. The most famous artists in the circus world are living here in Sarasota, or their families. So, and that's how my father homesteaded here, and he went on the road, and my mother stayed home with my sister and I, and we were in competitive swimming with Sarasota swim team, and life-saving, diving, gymnastics, sailor circus, which I was a part of also. And there was other circus kids. That's how Sailor Circus got started, by having so many kids from circus families in the school system that were athletically advanced, and thus Sailor Circus was created. So yeah, I mean, and then whenever my father came home, which was 3 or 4 times a year, you know, he would be home different lengths of time, but when the rehearsals, I more so remember the winter quarters being in Venice, and we would always go down there, or we would travel to wherever we could that was close enough. We would travel to watch him perform, like in St. Pete, Tampa, West Palm Beach, and such. You know, I had my eye on the girl on the flying trapeze or up in the air. That was, you know, my father said he had was born with a funny bone, and I always say, well, I must have had a feather, because I wanted to fly. So, you know, when there's a will, there's a way, and I think with you know, and you can see it with our kids here at Sailor Circus too. If they have a passion and a drive, nothing's stopping you.
Right.
If you want something, you can get it, and I did, and I was blessed to have my godmother, Margie Geiger, who was her husband was one of the original Walendas. Margie was a New Yorker, so they became our godparents. Joe was a German, like my dad, about the same age, and Margie was a ballet dancer from New York, and then when she joined Ringling, her husband Joe taught her this Roman ring act that she passed on to me, and it was one of the greatest gifts that I could have received, because it wasn't a physical gift; it was a gift of knowledge, and that's why everybody should really appreciate their teachers. And I'll never thank her enough for all that she gave me. It took me around the world, and it was very generous and kind of her.
And now you're teaching that to Sailor Circus Academy students. So
I am. It's a full circle, yes.
So was your sister a performer as well?
Yes, she too took to the air and did a beautiful single trapeze act. And she was very limber also, and so did a platform up above the trapeze crane bar, and it revolved, and she did the handstands and contortion up there, and then she would come down and do her single trapeze act. It was very beautiful.
Wow.
Yeah.
But she doesn't perform anymore. Is that correct?
That's correct. No, she doesn't perform. Not the trapeze. Not anymore. No.
So was anybody else in your family a circus performer? Like your extended family?
Not really. It's basically my mother, father, and my sister and I, and like I said, my godmother. But
yeah. I didn't know if you had any cousins or anything.
Nope. No, I have cousins, but none of them in the circus business. It's a funny story, and not funny, but my father's oldest brother was in World War I when they were still in Germany, and he was taken prisoner of war to Siberia, and in the cell, which was the dirt floor, when he was in with another prisoner, to pass the time, they dug a hole and started practicing hand balancing, which neither of them, were from, the business.
Right.
And when the war was over, all the prisoners had to walk home, whether it be Germany or France or Spain, or everybody walked home. When I heard that, it was just hard for me to fathom.
Yeah.
From Siberia, But because of their inventiveness and their, just making such good use of their time, they ended up with a vaudeville type of act, this hand balancing act that went to all the varietés all over Europe.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny.
Yeah, isn't that amazing?
Yeah, that really truly is. So you mentioned earlier that when you were with the Ringling that, you've been all over the world and you've interacted with people all over the world that were part of the Ringling show. How did that affect you?
Well, immense